Hello and welcome to Matchpoint, the new program here on CCTV Africa that brings you sports news, action, highlights and features from a uniquely African perspective. My name is Mahia Mutua. Let's quickly run through the highlights for tonight's show. Court finds Oscar Pistorius guilty of culpable homicide. What next for the Blade Runner? Kenya and South Africa among 12 nations battling it out for a spot in the Women's Rugby 7 Series. And Egyptian Premier League resumes this weekend, but stakeholders face a myriad of challenges ahead. Welcome to Matchpoint. We begin in South Africa, where Olympic and Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius will be sentenced on October the 13th after being guilty of culpable homicide for the killing of his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp. Judge Thokozile Masipa granted a bail extension for Pistorius following the verdict on Friday, a day after he avoided a more serious murder charge. Masipa found Pistorius negligent in shooting Steenkamp through a locked toilet door, but ruled that he did not intend to kill her. The crowds outside the court in Pretoria screamed Pistorius' name as he made his way out of the court under heavy security. The verdict means that the sprinter could face up to 15 years in jail, although the judge could suspend the sentence or impose a fine. The trial has captured the attention of the global media since Pistorius was charged with murder on February the 15th last year.
I have considered the submissions by counsel. This is not a Schedule 5 or a Schedule 6 offense. For that reason, the onus is on the state to persuade this court that it was not in the interest of justice that the accused bail be extended. I am not so persuaded. I have used my discretion in favor of the accused. I grant the application to extend the bail of the accused on the same conditions. Well, we'll postpone it to the 13th and see what happens.
We will be available and ready.
Thank you very much.
All right, so next month, Oscar Pistorius will find out his sentence after being convicted for culpable homicide. Whatever Judge Masipa decides, it will be a remarkable fall from grace from an athlete who once had it all.
It had all been so different. The Oscar Pistorius story had captured the world's imagination. He was an inspiration, a global icon. Here was an athlete who had beaten the odds, his disabilities, to achieve his goal of competing in both the able-bodied Olympics and the Paralympics in 2012.
It's just been an absolute dream come true, and I guess all in all I'm very, very happy, and the outcome of the Paralympics was more than I could have ever hoped for. And you know, running in an Olympic final and achieving one of my fastest 400s in the individual race was great for me as well.
The Pistorius story was one that resonated deeply with people around the world.
He was riding the crest of a wave. He was at the height of his career. He had been the golden boy of the Paralympic Games in London. He had done something that no other Paralympic athlete had done. He had competed in the Olympic Games as an athlete. He was dining with presidents and kings. He was traveling first class. He was staying in the presidential suite of the finest hotels. He was royalty. He was athletics royalty.
But just a few months later, on February the 14th, 2013, that world would come crashing down. Shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning, Pistorius had shot and killed his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp.
We can confirm that there was a shooting incident this morning at the home of the well-known Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius. At this stage we can confirm that a young woman, a 30-year-old woman, did die on the scene of gunshot wounds. A 26-year-old male has been arrested and has been charged with murder.
Pistorius claimed he had mistaken Steenkamp for an intruder, but the prosecution believed it was murder. Pistorius cut a forlorn figure during his bail application. He sobbed uncontrollably in the dock while the charge of murder was read out.
Seeing him in court on that first occasion, this was a pathetic, broken man. I mean, he's sobbing getting sick in the thing. It was an Oscar we'd never seen before. So I think it jolted the nation. I think we look towards these heroes. He was a South African hero, but to see him in that state, I think for many South Africans, realizing the tragedy of what is happening here to somebody who had it all.
Pistorius' lucrative sponsorship deals were frozen. CCTV News was granted exclusive access to his low-key return to training late last year. But it was clear his athletics career, for now at least, was on hold.
Well, this courtroom has been the focus for Oscar Pistorius since March. He's had to sit in this dock and listen as lead prosecutor Gerrie Nel, as well as numerous other witnesses, ripped apart his actions that night, as well as his overall character.
When Pistorius eventually took the stand, he fared little better.
Have a look there, mister. I know you don't want to because you don't want to take responsibility, but it's time that you look at it. Take responsibility for what you've done, Mr. Pistorius.
My lady, I've taken responsibility by me waiting and not wanting to live my life, but waiting for my time on this stand to tell my story for the respect of Riva and for myself. I've taken responsibility, but I will not look at a picture where I'm tormented by what I saw and felt that night. As I picked Riva up, my fingers touched her head. I remember. I don't have to look at a picture. I was there.
It's the same thing as the watermelon. You had it now in practice, mister. It's softer than brains.
There's no coming back for Oscar Pistorius. He admitted to killing another woman. The public will not accept anybody back after they admit to killing somebody.
Pistorius had it all. The houses, the cars, the fame, the adulation. He is still counting the cost of his actions on that tragic night. Dan Williams, CCTV, Pretoria.
All right, let's now get more on the case that has gripped the world. Joining us live from Johannesburg now is CCTV's Dan Williams, who of course has been following the trial right from the start. Dan, Pistorius now almost certainly faces some jail time, but is there any chance, from a sporting point of view at least, that he may now step up his training and start looking towards a return to the track?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly he'll have a lot more time on his hands over the next month ahead of sentencing. Of course, he spent so much time preparing for this trial, preparing to take the stand and all that would come with it. Now, of course, over the next month, he'll have a little extra time, one would imagine. When we had that access to him at the running track last July, it was a fairly half-hearted return to light training, it has to be said. And he has not been seen at that track too many times, although we did catch up with Trevor Brockman, the man who fits his prosthetic blades, and he says that he did catch up with Oscar Pistorius about a month or so ago. So he has been doing the odd bit of track work, it has to be said. And it is, you would imagine, will become front of mind now for Oscar Pistorius for the next month. Of course, it all depends on that sentencing, but he is an athlete. It's what he does. And but again, it just goes down to the fact that 1 month from now, just over, he will find out what sentence he has and what sentence he will be given. And from there, of course, we'll have to see.
Dan, obviously his career has been put on hold, like you mentioned in that story, but if he were to come back maybe sometime in the future, would he be welcomed back by the athletics world?
Well, already the International Paralympic Committee, they've already come out and said that they would not stand in Oscar Pistorius' way. They say that Oscar Pistorius has done so much for the Paralympic movement over the years that that they would indeed allow him to participate in IPC events going forward. Of course, he will still have to serve his sentence, and he will also have to be picked by the South Africa Paralympic Committee. But Oscar Pistorius for so long was the poster boy, wasn't he, of the Paralympic movement. So of course he brings so much value previously to that movement. The big question now, of course, is Rio 2016 and whether whatever punishment he gets, whether it would still allow him to take his place at the Rio Games. Now, we don't know Oscar Pistorius' state of mind. Certainly Trevor Brockman, who I mentioned earlier, he says that he feels that physically Oscar Pistorius would be able to make it back in time, but mentally he may still struggle. But of course all of that depends very much on what sentence he gets when that gets underway next month.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for that insight. Of course, I guess all questions will be answered on October the 13th. Dan Williams joining us live from Johannesburg. They are moving on now. The two African teams at the IRB Women's Rugby Sevens World Series suffered different fortunes on the first day of qualifiers on Friday. South Africa progressed to the next round following wins over Mexico and France. The team edged the French 21-19 in their first match before losing to an impressive China side 31-7. They then became one of the best third-place teams with a 36-0 victory over Mexico. Kenya, on the other hand, exited the tournament on the first day. The Lionesses lost 31-0 against Japan before losing 45-0 against Fiji. They only scored 5 in their final match, a 19-5 loss to Argentina. That means that tomorrow's quarterfinals see Fiji face Portugal while China face Brazil. France tackle Japan, while the fourth match pits South Africa against the Netherlands. The winners of those fixtures automatically secure core places to the 2014-2015 series. All right, now joining us here in studio is CCTV's George Kariuki, who is, of course, a rugby analyst with more details on the Hong Kong Sevens. George, now knowing that Kenya have exited the tournament in Hong Kong, what are the chances of the two African teams actually getting a spot to the Olympics?
Well, basically, this is the end of the road for Kenya as far as the Olympics are concerned. However, South Africa have a good chance. If they beat Netherlands, only one game stands between them and the Olympics. So if they beat Netherlands, they'll definitely make it there.
All right. All right. Now, obviously, this is the first time that rugby is being featured at the Olympic Games. What kind of flavor do you think that this sport brings to the Olympics?
Well, traditionally, rugby has always gone to the rugby fans, the people who will actually go to a field to the intent to watch rugby. This is the first time that the game is being taken to an Olympic scenario where people are playing different types of games, and very different people who've never seen rugby before will get a chance to see it. Right. So basically, this will work very well for Olympics 2020, the next Olympics. We're bound to see more teams participating, more teams wanting to you know, get involved in this new game that they don't know about.
Right, quite unorthodox, I guess, according to Olympic standards. Finally, do you think that the rugby teams in Africa, women's rugby specifically, do they get as much attention as the men's teams?
No, they don't. Unfortunately, when you think about traditionally, especially in Africa, rugby is perceived to be this sport where it's big, you know, it's a big man type of sport where it's almost like fighting. Right. But more and more people are getting to learn rugby is a more intellectual, a game with flair, and a game that ladies can play and women can play. And you're finding teams like Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Namibia paying attention to women's rugby, and definitely going ahead, you'll see a lot of change and people will pay attention to it.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, George. I guess we can look forward to the rugby flavor in South Africa. George Kariuki joining us live in studio, our rugby analyst. Let's now take a quick break, but still to come. Egyptian Premier League resumes this weekend, but stakeholders face a myriad of challenges ahead. And the annual Safari Rally kicks off in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi.
Terrific dunk right there.
Welcome back. You're watching Matchpoint. To a story we mentioned earlier, Egypt's Football Premier League will kick off in just 3 days' time on September the 15th. This will mark the first time that the league will be played in its original one-group format since the year 2011. But the full return of the league does not mean that all problems are over, from the decision over whether to allow fans back into the stadia to attend the games to security and broadcast rights. Many challenges still remain. Adel El Mahrouki has more.
Many here in Egypt describe the decision to hold the Premier League in its original format as a tough choice. Securing the games has been a challenge, particularly after fanatic football fans known as the Ultras clashed with security forces several times before. That's why the Interior Ministry decided to hold the league with no audience.
Fans are a very important factor in the competition. It revives the game, but the security circumstances will have an effect. Many are not satisfied with the decision to ban fans from the games, so there might be protests and angry fans. These are issues that can explode at any time.
Egyptian football suffered like the entire country did after the January Revolution in 2011. The declining point, however, was after 72 Al Ahly fans got killed during clashes with Al Masry fans later that year. Since then, the Red Devils have been rejecting to play any matches with Al Masry, and that remains a problem because the federation hasn't yet reached an agreement on the logistics of these games.
Tension between the management of the two teams has ended, and they've agreed to face each other in the league. The game will definitely be outside Al Masry's hometown according to FIFA sanctions. They'll be held in a neutral location. Therefore, there is still a risk in choosing and securing a location that fits that description. But all this should be settled before the league starts.
These days, broadcasting rights are causing another problem for the league. A 7-club coalition led by Al Ahly have sold their broadcasting rights for £80 million, while Al Zamalek's coalition got £77 million for 13 clubs. But experts say that conflict could be easily resolved. The Premier League will start on September 15th, but many of Egypt's top players will not be free to join, as the national team will intensify its training to make up for the defeats during the first round of qualifications in the African Cup of Nations. And the Olympic team will also be preparing to qualify for Rio de Janeiro in 2016. So it might not be the best league, but to many Egyptians, it's a good start. Adel El Mahrouki, CCTV, Cairo.
All right, now to give us a better perspective of what the resumption of the Football League means, let's now cross live to Cairo, where CCTV's Adel El Mahrouki joins us. Adel, thanks for joining us. The main question, of course, good news for the football fans, is that the league resumes on Monday. But the big question, obviously, for them, will they be allowed back into the stadium?
They will not. So far, this has been the final decision, and this is what the Football Federation has failed, along with the leaders of all 20 clubs that will be competing in the league, when they sat with the Interior Ministry this week. They sat with the Interior Minister and spoke for a long time, trying to convince him that it's about time that Egypt has fans back to the stadium. It's about time to give the league the spark it used to have and engage the audience into the league once again. But the Interior Ministry insisted that the situation right now is quite volatile, particularly after what we've seen in the past couple of weeks of the fanatic football groups, the Ultras fans, that have been trying to confront some of the presidents of the clubs, particularly Al Zamalek club, where they surrounded Murtada Mansour, the president of Al Zamalek house, and have vowed to continue that this tension between both sides. And on the other hand, the Interior Ministry also stressed that some clubs, referring to Al Ahly, have given a lot of support to these groups, who in turn have been clashing with the police since the Port Said and Al Ahly riots have ignited in 2011. So he says that the situation in Egypt is not yet stable to accept fans to go back and take the risk of having a possibility of conflict happening between the fans, particularly the ultras, and the security forces. So for now, the league will start without audience, but the federation is still saying that it will research more ideas and try to reach a definite plan to convince the authorities to let the audience back.
All right, Adel, good news obviously for the fans is that the football is back, but they will not be watching in the stadia. Adel El Mahrouki joining us live from Cairo there. To motorsports now, specifically to the race that is known as arguably the toughest rally in the world. The Safari Rally is a 3-day scramble across some of the most punishing terrain in Kenya. The ordeal began earlier today on the streets of Nairobi. Kenyan drivers posted the fastest 3 times, with last year's winner Baldev Chagar posting 29.35 seconds less than a minute ahead of Ian Duncan, who won the event in 1994. 4-time winner Carl Tundo was 3rd, while current African Rally champion leader Gary Chains of Cote d'Ivoire was the 9th fastest. Earlier, CCTV's Robert Nagila was at the iconic Kenyatta International Conference Center to help them flag off.
The Kenyan leg of the African Rally Championship. 65 drivers hunting a win. Among them, 2012 ARC champion Issa Mohammed of Zambia and this year's frontrunner Gary Chains from Ivory Coast. Kenya's president got things started, and his compatriot, the veteran Baldev Chagar, was first off the ramp.
This is the first of 3 legs over 3 days, covering a total of 310 kilometers today alone. And perhaps this is the only bit of tarmac the crews are likely to see, because the rest of it is basically rocks, soil and sand, a reason why it's known as the toughest rally in the world.
And that's what they'll be racing across for the next 3 days. A scenic route that takes them around Mount Kenya. There's no doubt it's a big draw for sports fans here.
We had to come and see the rally. My son loves the cars.
I'm here to see the cars live and direct. I heard it on the radio and wanted to be a part of it.
I'm training to be one. I'm aspiring to be one.
Day 2 will take the cars through central Kenya, with special stages set up for spectators. The winner is expected to cross the finishing line late Sunday to claim the title and points in the African Rally Championship. Robert Nagila, CCTV, Match Point.
All right, a change of pace now. Tomorrow obviously sees the start of the IAAF Continental Cup in Marrakech, Morocco. The 2-day event marks the 2nd edition of the championship in its current format. The competition sees 4 regions, Asia Pacific, Africa, Europe and the Americas, compete against each other. Africa has 88 athletes taking part and will hope to do better than 3rd place last time around in Croatia. So who are the potential medal winners and their competition? The men's 5,000 meters sees 3 Kenyan-born runners pitted against each other, running for 3 different continents. For Africa, we have Isaiah Koech, who is the World Youth 3,000 meters title holder. For Asia Pacific, Albert Rop, who is a Kenyan-born Bahraini. And for Europe, we have Ali Kaya, another Kenyan-born runner representing Turkey. In the women's 200 meters, it's going to take a lot to beat these 2 women, Veronica Campbell-Brown of Jamaica and Michelle Lee Ahe of Trinidad and Tobago, who lead the Americas. Africa's hopes lie with Marie-Josée Talou, the continental 100 meters bronze medalist and 200 meters runner-up. The men's 1500 meters will pose a chance for revenge for 2-time world champion Asbel Kiprop of Kenya. He lost the African title last month to Djibouti's Ayanle Suleiman at the same venue last month. The two are now African teammates and face a very tough test, most probably from Frenchman Mekissi Benabad, who won gold in the European Championships in Zurich. Genzebe Dibaba has a lot to prove in the women's 3,000 meters. She put on a good display recently in the longer distances, but has not won anything in this event in 4 attempts. Mimi Belete, who also features in the 1,500 meters, leads the charge for Asia Pacific, while Merif Bahta of Sweden is running for Europe, and she's another one to watch. The 800 meters men's is another one to watch as well. Botswana's Nigel Amos has been unstoppable this season. His Africa teammate is Ethiopia's Mohamed Aman in the absence of Kenya's David Rudisha. One person who can put a threat to these two is Adam Kshtot, the European champion. He won the Diamond League in Stockholm, where Amos could only manage 5th place. Africa can then expect to get something in the women's 3,000 meters. Almaz Ayana of Ethiopia is the second fastest this year. Kenya's Joyce Chepkirui runs alongside her for Africa. She holds the Commonwealth and African gold in the 10,000 meters. They'll need to look out, though, for Bahrain's finalist in the Olympics, Tejitu Daba, who leads the charge for Asia Pacific. Well, now moving on, Golola Moses is a household name in Uganda. The brash 34-year-old has single-handedly lifted the sport of kickboxing in the East African country, a discipline which previously generated minimal fan interest in Uganda. However, not even a recent defeat in the Intercontinental Championship to America's Richard Abraham was enough to deflate the fighter's confidence. Here is Golola talking about his future prospects, his humorous personality, and the possibility of a rematch.
I am Moses Gola, the Eastern Central African champion, best of the best, and the Africa champion from Uganda. I found kickboxing, but it was not so much popular. People, they didn't know about it, was so much in prison. But I was in boxing when I changed to come into kickboxing because my dream, my goal was to be the champion. I wanted to do something for my country. I see that kickboxing is a little bit changing, but it has not really get where I'm expecting it to be because we don't have gyms in Uganda here. Even the trainers are very few. We want to see that we bring these international trainers. We have practice here. We have a team which is training with us here so that we can take kickboxing to the next level. The matter of the fact, I have to talk because this is business. There is what we call marketing. I mean, companies, they market themselves, and who is going to market this kickboxing? Who knew that kickboxing will be seen all over the world? If it was not about my talking, because it's not all about talking, because there are so many people who talk. But I talk and I try my best. They call me that the most celebrated kickboxer in Africa because I put in the love. The more talking, look, because I can say, I'm the man who can just look at the woman and get pregnant. You woman, don't get scared. A man who can write 0 upside down. When I train when mosquitoes are sleeping. So all those comic words are the one which has made my fans to love me, to love the sport. Oh, the fight against Abraham, this was a tough fight. I want to tell you, in me, I take it that I honor that fight because it was an aggressive fighter. When people came to know about Richard Abraham, everyone was telling me, Moses, why do you accept to fight with this guy? I mean, this guy has so many fights. Well, Moses, everyone was getting scared. And I said, no. I was the champion of that title. But I stood and I said, I have to defend this title with a strong champion because I'm looking forward to fight the #1 champion. Richard Abraham gave me the best, but he has not seen my best.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for you tonight on Match Point. Thank you for watching. Do join us again next week. We leave you now with some images from the sporting highlights this past week.
It's going to be Japan with Mifuyu Koide going to start the scoring and give Japan a 5-0 lead.